In his seminal work, Beyond Good and Evil, Friedrich Nietzsche provocatively declares that he would classify the stature of philosophers based entirely on the caliber of their laughter, elevating those who can achieve a truly golden mirth to the highest tier. He further muses that if divine beings engage in philosophy, a conclusion he felt inevitably drawn toward, they undoubtedly possess a novel, superhuman capacity for amusement, finding immense delight in mocking everything we deem serious or sacred. Throughout his existence, this profound thinker battled severe physiological ailments while obsessively seeking remedies for nihilism, which he diagnosed as the ultimate cultural malady afflicting the Western world. By weaving themes of childlike playfulness, ecstatic dance, and unbridled amusement throughout his writings, he managed to transcend his profound physical suffering and intellectual despair. As the prominent scholar Walter Kaufmann observes, this concept of mirth serves not merely as an emotional reaction, but as a comprehensive philosophical stance regarding the universe, mortal existence, and one's own identity. By passionately advocating for the practice of self-mockery, the German philosopher highlights how directing derision at cherished institutions, beloved individuals, or even our own egos, functions as a potent expression of necessary contempt. For those of you striving to interrogate your most sacred values and deeply held convictions with uncompromising clarity, this mechanism provides a vital, albeit temporary, emotional detachment. It grants you the crucial objectivity required to accurately assess the genuine worth of your affections, compelling you to abandon your self-importance and concede that many of your foundational beliefs are fundamentally flawed. Naturally, in wielding this sharp intellectual weapon, the author himself frequently became the target of similar mockery from his contemporaries. Crucially, we are not discussing ordinary chuckling here, but rather a profound, resonant joy that erupts from the very core of human anguish and profound suffering. You must learn to cultivate this superhuman amusement from the absolute depths of your soul, a concept most vividly illustrated in his magnum opus, Thus Spoke Zarathustra. Within this visionary narrative, the titular prophet distinguishes sharply between the dismissive laughter of the herd and the transcendent laughter of the height. Having endured a decade of isolated contemplation in the high mountains, the sage realizes he must undertake a going under, a descent back into human society to distribute his accumulated wisdom. However, when he stands before a bustling marketplace crowd to preach about the Übermensch as the ultimate meaning of the earth, while condemning the utterly complacent last man, his revelation is met only with the derisive, mocking guffaws of the collective herd, who perversely beg to be transformed into the mediocre last man instead. In stark contrast to that societal scorn stands the awe-inspiring laughter of the height, which is dramatically revealed when our protagonist encounters a young shepherd writhing on the ground, a thick black serpent securely latched onto the back of his throat. After his desperate attempts to rip the reptilian parasite from the agonizing youth prove utterly futile, the desperate prophet vehemently commands the boy to sever the creature's head with his own teeth. The youth follows this visceral instruction perfectly, forcefully ejecting the severed head before leaping to his feet as a completely metamorphosed entity, no longer a mere mortal, but a radiant being, emitting a sound of pure, unprecedented jubilation. Witnessing this impossible, unearthly joy, the sage is instantly consumed by an insatiable, agonizing thirst to experience that same euphoric release, leaving him trapped in a tormenting state where he can neither endure his current existence nor willingly surrender to death. This agonizing inability to perish stems directly from the fact that he has yet to unleash that extraordinary, superhuman mirth himself, a burning compulsion that relentlessly propels him forward. The narrative's true philosophical climax arrives when he finally confronts his most terrifying, abysmal thought, the doctrine of eternal recurrence, which posits that the greatest conceivable afterlife is simply an infinite, exact repetition of the very life we have just experienced. While this eternal loop represents the ultimate paradise for a fiercely spirited, world-affirming individual, it also demands the endless repetition of humanity's most petty and insignificant traits. Initially utterly paralyzed and sickened by this horrifying realization, lying entirely incapacitated for 7 days, the prophet ultimately rises above the inherent horrors of existence to become the ultimate yes-sayer, passionately embracing and loving reality exactly as it unfolds. Later in his journey, the visionary encounters various higher men, figures intended to clearly surpass the mindless herd, yet who still fall woefully short of the Übermensch ideal, merely representing fragmented, incomplete facets of the sage's own vast experience. Possessing the hard-won joy of the summits, he easily outmatches their somber dispositions in sheer playfulness, openly rejecting their reverent adoration by bluntly informing them that they simply lack the necessary height and spiritual strength. He proclaims that the future belongs to a breed of stronger, infinitely more joyful individuals, declaring that laughing lions must come, a direct reference to the renowned 3 metamorphoses of the human spirit. Before achieving that leonine ferocity, or the subsequent innocence of the child, the spirit must first transform into a sturdy camel, willingly kneeling to shoulder the crushing burdens of existence, our vanities, our sacrifices, and our relentless appetites, by constantly asking itself, what is the heaviest thing? Could it be that the true path involves humiliating yourself to wound your own ego, allowing your foolishness to radiate so that your intellect is ridiculed? Nietzsche proposes that, during moments of immense self-satisfaction, you must shoulder even heavier burdens to demonstrate your inherent limitations, effectively forcing yourself into a state of profound humility. This resilient, burden-seeking soul accepts these crushing weights, much like a heavily laden camel racing out into the barren wasteland. At this juncture in the desert, your spirit experiences a radical metamorphosis, morphing into a fierce lion. Having shed those previous physical weights, this predatory entity seeks absolute liberation. Yet it immediately faces a colossal dragon, whose glittering scales represent every ancient law and the imperative, you shall, compiled since the dawn of humanity. To survive, the feline beast must fiercely combat this monstrous authority by roaring the defiant phrase, I will, thereby expressing the sacred no. Though this state of pure rebellion still requires one ultimate evolution into the form of a child. As the text describes, the infantile state embodies pure innocence and a blank slate, representing a fresh start, a playful mechanism, and an autonomous driving force that finally voices the sacred yes. Following the rebellious rejection of all past dogmas, this youthful figure enthusiastically embraces existence through a profoundly positive affirmation of reality. Shedding societal guilt and embracing this unburdened mentality ultimately paves your way to true autonomy. By doing so, you conquer your own reality, allowing you to forge unique moral codes instead of settling for meaningless distractions that obstruct the genuine appreciation of being alive. The oppressive weight dragging down humanity partially stems from historical customs that have actively suppressed joyful amusement, unfairly associating it with mere clownishness and absurdity. Genuine merriment remains a rare commodity enjoyed by only a minority, and it desperately needs to reclaim its divine position within our modern culture. When addressing the intellectual elite, Zarathustra delivers a wildly passionate glorification of mirth, practically begging his audience to master the essential art of mocking their own flaws, just as any enlightened individual should. Setting himself in direct opposition to the biblical figure who condemned those who experience joy, this philosophical protagonist offers a vibrant alternative to the traditional crown of thorns, proudly declaring that he has crowned himself with a wreath of roses and sanctified his own amusement. Proudly claiming the title of the Laughing Prophet, he concludes his impassioned plea by demanding that his elite listeners cultivate a profound sense of humor. Ultimately, these superior individuals must transform into chuckling predators so they can fully accept the concept of eternal recurrence and experience the joyous elation of the summit, a monumental feat they eventually accomplish. Nietzsche presents the seemingly paradoxical idea that you possess the inherent ability to actively forge your own identity, implying that human development is an endless cycle of harmonizing personal habits, behaviors, and inherent traits. Nevertheless, this conscious self-design is only possible once you have completed that ultimate infantile transformation, essentially hitting the reset button on your life. Mastering this inner harmony is exceptionally challenging, and even upon merging your history with your current reality, the impending tomorrow remains uncharted. Therefore, actualizing your true self is not a static finish line that you cross while laughing from a mountaintop. Despite this endless journey, Zarathustra successfully realizes his true nature, unlocking a transcendent, almost divine sense of amusement. This joyous outburst likely stems from his ability to view all of existence, including his personal journey, as a grand theatrical comedy, fully recognizing the underlying void of meaninglessness beneath the surface of reality. Evidence for this perspective appears in the text The Gay Science, where the writer theorizes that mirth might eventually partner with true intellect, leaving behind only joyous knowledge, whereas our current unawakened era remains hopelessly trapped in a tragic cycle dominated by rigid religious and moral frameworks. Conversely, any individual who successfully scales this philosophical peak gains the extraordinary ability to find humor in absolutely every catastrophe, whether literal or entirely fabricated. When looking down from this elevated perspective, every single event becomes a potential source of entertainment, transforming the very act of living into the most magnificent punchline imaginable. The fully realized individual, much like the prophet himself, understands that personal growth demands relentless reinvention without any ultimate destination, yet they maintain a brilliantly comical outlook on this chaotic journey by laughing with supernatural intensity. The crucial lesson mastered by Zarathustra, which serves as the foundation for both his freedom and his mastery over himself, is the vital capacity to mock his own ego with unapologetic honesty. Instead of slipping into the self-deception that the existentialist Jean-Paul Sartre labeled bad faith, this worldview encourages you to chuckle directly at the universe's inherent lack of meaning. Consequently, when the enlightened wanderer releases his booming laugh from the summit, the ongoing, lifelong requirement of reinventing himself no longer feels like an oppressive duty. By wholeheartedly accepting eternal recurrence, he injects the mundane world with that same youthful, mischievous energy found in every great joke. Actively forging your personal moral compass is absolutely necessary if you hope to inject any significance into your daily existence, even though there is no cosmic validation for these chosen ethics beyond your own willpower. This striking contradiction is precisely what fuels that euphoric mirth experienced at the highest peaks of human consciousness. Despite the ethical debates surrounding the concept of finding amusement in profound suffering, this Zarathustrian philosophy of joy demonstrates how a robust sense of humor expands your universe, utilizing that youthful, fresh start to help you recognize entirely new, previously unimaginable ways of interpreting reality. Furthermore, the interpersonal dimension of comedy and the sheer joy of laughing alongside others naturally fosters a deep sense of communal bonding among individuals. While finding safety and acceptance within a collective undoubtedly offers significant psychological benefits, integrating into any societal pack inevitably forces you to comply with their specific behavioral codes, or face the terrifying threat of permanent social exile. Zarathustra revels in a transcendent laughter, an expression of his complete liberation as a solitary figure unburdened by societal limitations. Emulating his path demands profound sacrifices, as you must abandon your deeply ingrained craving for safety. You naturally cling to various comforting anchors, such as institutional religion, scientific rationality, close-knit relationships, or even your personal charisma and intellect. While these stabilizing forces offer an illusion of security, they ultimately stifle the profound evolution of your comedic spirit. From his elevated vantage point, Zarathustra dares you to cast aside those very comforting illusions that keep you tethered. By deliberately severing ties with the collective mindset of his culture, he has achieved a level of detachment that most individuals never experience. This conscious isolation broadens his perspective exponentially. Ascending to such intellectual peaks grants an absolute liberty where authentic humor can finally blossom to its maximum potential. Nietzsche's exploration of life's inherent absurdity, embodied by Zarathustra's triumphant mirth, underscores a crucial realization. Tragedy and comedy operate not as conflicting extremes, but as deeply intertwined facets of human experience. The philosopher identifies with those burdened by an overwhelming vitality, intimately understanding the agonizing ecstasy inherent in the creative process. He speculated that humanity's unique capacity for laughter was likely forged in the crucible of unparalleled torment, suggesting that the most profoundly sorrowful creature inevitably birthed the most vibrant cheerfulness simply to survive its own anguish. Consequently, Nietzsche advocates for plunging headfirst into profound discomfort, arguing that enduring severe distress is the absolute prerequisite for unlocking unparalleled rapture. He posited that agony and ecstasy are inextricably bound, meaning that seeking supreme jubilation necessitates a complete willingness to endure crushing sorrow. This perspective illuminates a perfect equilibrium between conflicting states, a balance the thinker did not merely theorize, but lived intimately, weathering agonizing suffering to ultimately achieve a divine, ecstatic bliss. True strength lies in acknowledging humanity's diminished cosmic significance, without feeling personally degraded by that profound realization. Nietzsche compels you to accept your inherent mortal boundaries, anchoring you once again as a grounded, yet dignified, earthly creature. Even alongside his most formidable concepts, the death of God, the Übermensch, the will to power, and the eternal recurrence, a resonant humor dismantles your arrogant attempts to transcend your deeply human nature. Embracing mortality should never provoke despair. Instead, it offers you a profound opportunity to passionately affirm your existence and convert your mortal state into boundless delight. Humor remains fundamentally woven into Nietzschean philosophy, reinforcing the idea that genuine joviality often transcends the need for heavy analytical thought. Unquestionably, a comedic perspective is vital to what the philosopher considered the ultimate pursuit and the genuine metaphysical purpose of our lives. These moments of levity serve as deliberate challenges, urging you to reevaluate human connections and the frameworks you use to assign meaning to a chaotic, heartbreakingly absurd universe. Until you critically assess the limitations of your religious, moral, and scientific paradigms, genuine celebratory laughter will remain an elusive dream, leaving you trapped within existence's unending cosmic joke. Ultimately, the subversive amusement echoing through Nietzsche's work represents a passionate endorsement of Amor Fati. It stands as a genuine declaration of belonging to the world, reflecting a profound desire to recognize the inherent beauty in absolute necessity, and thereby become a creator of beauty oneself. Embracing Amor Fati means refusing to wage war against ugliness or cast blame upon accusers, opting instead to let averting your gaze be the sole act of rejection. The highest ambition here is to evolve into someone who unconditionally affirms reality, greeting the entirety of life with a resounding, joyful acceptance.